I am sitting with Dr. Clara Moisello, who I met just around 10 years ago, perhaps more than 10 years ago. When I met Clara, she was in academia. She was a neuroscience researcher, and she showed up at, I guess, one of my introductions, and the rest is history. Clara is now one of our senior trainers. She does workshops online and in person in the New York area, and she works with businesses. She works with individuals, and we have been working together, probably in contact pretty steadily now for that entire 10-year period. And today, we're here to talk about one of our favorite, if not our favorite, subject, which is something that came out of the last 10 years, which is something we call needs awareness. Now, Clara and I have we started our work in something that's known as nonviolent communication, and we have just been doing this in depth for a number of years now. And something that has just occurred to us so clearly over these years is that there's many people know about nonviolent communication as a communication model. And what happened was Clara and I we both discovered this thing called needs awareness, which really is almost like the engine to nonviolent communication. And what we found out is that it's this thing that us humans experience, and or when we experience this. And when I say needs awareness, I'm talking about literally an awareness, a connection to an understanding of universal human needs. And by that, I don't mean cars and jobs and things like that. I'm talking about things like love or creativity or companionship, and this thing that connects us, as it turns out. And one of the things that I've really come to notice or be clear on is that we all of us humans, all 8 billion of us, have a slightly different worldview. None of us really sees the world the same way. We all have, when we were children, maybe we were hungry, maybe we were fed. So that's going to change our worldview. Maybe when we brought a pebble to our parents, some of our parents said, put that down, it's dirty. And some other parents said, wow, that's beautiful. Where did you get that? So we have all this infinite, really, combination of experiences that gives us all different worldviews. And I think the important thing about that is that we can have not just, it's impossible for us to have the exact same worldview, although some of us have similar worldviews. We can have extremely different worldviews. And so trying to understand somebody based on what they think, or even what they have, what they know culturally through their experience as a human, is different than our universal human needs. And the thing about that is that our universal human needs are just that. They are universal, and which means we all have them. And there's this idea that we all have, not only do we all have them, we have the exact same set of needs. So no matter how different our worldview may be, our needs are the same. And that gives us this way to create connection, to create a level of understanding that would be virtually impossible to achieve at times through worldview. And so we call this thing needs awareness, is really what we've come down to, is just noticing that these universal human needs have this incredible effect on us humans. And that is when we understand our own needs and we understand other people's needs, it changes our relationship. It changes how we think about one another, how we feel about one another. And it's this incredible phenomenon that's right under our noses, that we have this thing called needs awareness. When we have needs awareness, it changes everything. And when I say changes everything, I'm talking about evolution. I mean, changing everything. And I really do believe that needs awareness stands as not if the next, one of the next things that is going to help us humans evolve. And so Clara has been, we've been working with this, and Clara has really been, I think, refining this idea. And I'm just going to hand it over to Clara right now to add to anything I just said, and kind of take it from here. And if you want to say anything about us or about your experience or anything like that, let's go.
Thank you. Thank you, first of all. I'm so excited. It's right about time that we come together to chat. And I'm so glad to share this time with you and to have a moment to reflect together and to us and the people who are listening to on this idea, this seemingly such a simple idea, right? You start, the first time I met you, 10 and a half or so years ago, came to your first Monday, and the very first thing you greeted us with was everything we do can be seen as an attempt to meet needs, right? And I, that was quite in some ways a surprising intro because, as you said before, right? So we are in this lineage of nonviolent communication. I got to you as through that and the amazing work of Marshall Rosenberg and and that was not the typical way the work was presented, right? I came to you, and so and right from the get go, I was like, oh, this is surprising to me. I had been familiar, as probably many of the people who are familiar with the work more to, and some of you who are listening may know that what's called the OFNR model, right? So NVC was kind of popularized through this particularly these communication steps, and one of them is is needs. And for those who don't know it, the acronym stands for observation, feelings, needs, and request. And so seeing the centrality of needs since the beginning, working with you, Thom, was really a new kind of a different entry into this work, and one that I've been then stepping into and reflecting since then, really, in this past decade of working with you and with a number of other both amazing practitioners, including, and I think we should mention him, your mentor, Robert Gonzalez, that was a beloved teacher of both of us. And I think, and I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on this. It's almost like my perception is that in some way, there's almost been a branch of NVC teachers, sharers, and practitioners that has moved a little bit away from the model approach to a needs-based consciousness, let's say, approach that in a way almost steps a little bit away even from the communication aspect to be first and foremost a guide to direct our attention to look at our life, right, from this new perspective. So
Mhm.
I know we've been chatting a lot, and I'm excited to delve more into that because I think in recent times, you and I, uh, as as we in our musings and chatted for the listeners, we do regularly, and then we talk for hours about all sort of facets of our work. We were realizing this is really the heart of the matter, right? The seeing needs, as you said, changes everything. And I want to dive a bit more into what we really mean by needs. You started, but before that, maybe I was curious to hear from you. And I know it's your podcast, and I'm here asking you questions now. I think it could be interesting, maybe for listeners to also hear how you came to that, right? Because you studied with Marshall, you
Yeah.
studied with Robert Gonzalez, and I know
Mhm.
other people. So how did this sort of shift in the way of sharing NVC
Yeah.
come about?
Well, I think it had to do with really my background, but kind of just how I think as a human being. I mean, my background is in engineering, and so I always want to know how things work. And so I started out with, studying with this model that we talk about, this language model, and everybody was talking about, well, this is all about communication, and I was like, yeah, but communication starts with thinking. And then thinking starts with what we're aware of. And so it just hit me that, wait a minute, this is really not a language model. This is a kind of a sneaky way to draw our attention to one of the four of the OFNRs. It was really all about the N. It was about the needs. And, we talk about feelings and needs, but when we talk about needs awareness, yeah, feelings, it plays a role, but its role is to bring us to an awareness of needs, to let us know, when we're not feeling well, that our needs aren't being met, and when we're feeling good, our needs are met. And so, uh, it just I started seeing this kind of this cause and effect, which was that, and certainly in my practice, that the more I could become aware of my needs and see myself this way as my entire being, really. And if you're listening to this, you try this on, like our entire being, everything, that not just what the things that we do, but even the things that we think. All of our life is kind of all pulled into this direction of meeting our needs. And so it has this incredible effect of creating what I call compassionate understanding, not just like a cognitive understanding, but this real sense of, I get you, because in needs awareness, you're just like I am. Like we're all the same. We all have needs. And so that really became, and I also realized as a trainer, as a teacher, that this was the thing that made everything else work. And if people just learned this as a cognitive practice and not an awareness, uh, it didn't work. It just didn't work. The intention of nonviolent communication would never be really completely fulfilled unless you had this awareness and what I call the parallel universe of needs, this this force that's in every living thing. And like I say, what do you call a person without needs? The word is dead. And so really what Marshall did was he created this model around this this mode of becoming aware and seeing, experiencing, and having a relationship to this thing that's happening to all of us humans, is that we're having a human life. And it was so hard. Life is so complex. It's very hard for us to kind of simplify it, to figure out, well, what really is the meaning of life, right? I think we've been asking that for a few years now. And for me, I could be like, well, the meaning of life is to meet our needs. It's to be happy. And to be happy, that happens when our needs are met. And so my training in my course and in my book, it's I don't know how many chapters are involved in this awareness, but so there are a couple of words I want to bring into the picture here. One is compassion, and the other one is empathy, and actually another one, self-empathy. So three, make that three. And so what I realized is the more that we had this element of empathy, or this needs-based empathy, where we were aware of our own, in self-empathy, aware of our own needs, and in empathy, aware of other people's needs, this thing happens. We are naturally drawn to this state of compassion. And that was what Robert Gonzalez really put his finger on and really got my attention with. So that was, that's always the thing for me. And I don't talk about other elements of Marshall's. I don't really talk about requests in my course until I think 40 weeks of practice, because requests really come from an awareness of needs. And so these other elements are all built around this awareness of needs. And so that was the thing. And so that was me harping on needs over and over and over and over again, because I knew that, and still know to this day, and I see it every day, that we can't skip over this at all. This is the foundation of Marshall's work, and it's actually the foundation of other work as well. But it is a um, it's a natural, it's like this organic step that we can take. A lot of folks are, we say, well, we should be compassionate, or we try to practice compassion. And if we're not going to, if we're really going to be compassionate, yes, can we kind of meditate ourselves there to some degree? Yes. Could we force ourselves there? Could we fake it and just till we make it? To some degree, yes. But it was this idea of needs awareness that just made it work. It wasn't, there was nothing forced about it. In fact, it was a natural occurrence that the more I could develop my awareness of needs, my relationship to needs in myself and in others, which we call empathy, and that's how we do that, that's when things changed. And not just in a moment, but really as an entire perspective on how I live my life and how I get to see life, and how it gives me this ability to connect to people who are doing things that I absolutely cannot stand, that I find absolutely horrible, and yet I can make a connection to somebody who's doing something horrible. And to me, that got me. That's when I was really seriously hooked on. I was seriously hooked on this work, because it occurs to me, one of my lifelong dreams is to make war obsolete. And for that to happen, we have got to understand people who are doing things that we just find absolutely abhorrent. And and if we're going to get along with ourselves, none of us actually does everything. We don't like every single thing that we do. And so how is it that we can stay connected to life, stay connected with ourselves and each other in this in this um, uh, in this state of things not going well? It's easy when things are going well, right? Have a party, we're good. But when things are tough, when we're in conflict, whether it's with a spouse, a friend, ourselves, this thing of needs awareness changes everything. So anything you'd like to add to that, Clara?
Oh my God, so many things. I try to keep notes of so many thoughts. Let's see. Let's let them emerge as they do. Yeah, the first thing, touching back as to what you were saying, how this work of Marshall evolved, right? As you mentioned, it's first and foremost as how we think, so intimately connected with how we speak, right? And words, Marshall's big intuitions, the words are so powerful and can make a difference in either awakening our potential to care for one another that we have, thankfully, as humans, but they can also, bring us to the opposite extreme of disconnection and violence. And so it's interesting how then words can become a portal for awareness, and that is very different from them being a very stereotypical way to speak. And I think that's the confusion that sometimes happens in some NVC circles, is that we mistake that the sort of that portal from then a way to speak. And sometimes, of course, we'll weave those elements in our communication, but it's there's a whole, as you said, a process of reorienting really our way to understand life in some sense. I think this seemingly uh, uh, such a, I don't know how people would describe it, but we say, right, when we bring needs, I'm sure people have heard that word infinite times. So it's not that we're bringing, I don't know, a new chemical compound or something that we've discovered. And yet, I don't think this idea of human needs has been articulated in the same powerful way as it's been first brought by Marshall and then, frankly, really developed by you through your work in the compassion course. And so, and to get a little deeper onto the power of these concepts of needs, and in some ways, they really offer us a way to touch on that. You called it the experience of being alive, right? We're all living a human life, and you were saying we may differ in many ways, and as to how this life expresses itself. But at heart, there's, Robert would call it an energy, right? And even Marshall, like kind of a life energy that moves through. As long as we're alive, there's a life-serving impulse that wants to keep us alive. And of course, that can range from the basic survival alive to the flourishing and thriving, right? Alive. And so, and needs concepts, so the way we use needs as how we define that is really all those words that help us capture just that, right? So capture that energy. And it's important to clarify that, because as you say, like, we're distinguishing in our language, we so often use the expression I need followed by an object, a person, an action, like I need the partner, I need the car, I need to clean my room, and so on and so
Yeah,
forth.
so that this
And
concept, the distinction really between needs and strategies is how we, right, we like to.
exactly. So from the tangible objects, people, actions that we take, we call them strategy in our sort of NVC and compassionate thinking realm, versus needs as we mean it, which is abstract, right? The words that you find on our needs inventory, which maybe we will link in the show notes.
Yeah.
You will see that the words on that list, they are not things, they're not actions, but they're abstract qualities and abstract concepts that tries to capture that universal quality you were talking about, right? And in fact, that's almost the litmus test that you can think of when if you ask yourself, oh, is this a need, which comes up so often in workshops, like with I don't know, is revenge a need, or is whatever other words a need, to realize that. First and foremost, what I tell people is, okay, the only thing I can tell you with certainty is that's a word, that's a concept, and that I can tell you that. To understand if that's a need according to our definition, then is to see that is as distinct as possible from any specific behavior, from any specific person. And it serves life. It's a constructive, creative force that supports life. And so, as you said, these ranges from more than just the basic survival needs of safety, shelter, food, and water, and so on, to qualities that range from freedom, autonomy, to connection and intimacy, to creativity and meaning, play, fun. So there's such a rich palette, right, of qualities that we long for. And in some ways, yes, it's true. You could say, and even the neuroscientist in me couldn't agree more, than our brain, our nervous system, is in service of us meeting needs. The main purpose is keeping us alive, therefore meeting our needs.
Yeah.
And again, of course, This can be seen at the most granular level of our organs and whatever keeps us alive on the micro level, from the interactions that we have, that the relationships, and the more sort of, let's say, the macro needs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so needs as such are a very special type of words and concept that allow us both to make sense of our experience, and so to regulate it in some way too. It's kind of a bridge from experience to action, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then also to make sense of our relational life, right? If I can bring that lens into relationship, it gives me a particular way to understand where you are coming from, that in this powerful way connects.
Yeah. I'd like to even add to
Please
that a
go
little
go
bit,
go for it. Yeah.
which is, I mean, this isn't just interesting. I mean, at least to us, right? And hopefully to you to some degree, if you're listening. But it has this amazing practical aspect to it. And that is, um, in the realm of conflict resolution. Clara just referred to our, how we relate. Well, here's a real practical concept for that I bring, that I think needs gives us access to, that we probably don't have. So, for example, let's throw out some numbers here. If I am considering a strategy, not a need, but a way to meet a need, I have two choices, right? I can do the strategy or I cannot do the strategy. I have two choices. Now, I like to I ask my students this all the time, how many ways are there to meet a need? And I like to say there are 10,000 ways to meet any given need, scientifically proven, 10,000, although not really scientifically proven. I jest. However, the numbers make sense. I mean, it's not far off. The 10,000 might be short, actually. So when we look at needs, and this is really important when we're talking about conflict resolution, when we're talking about how is it that we can create solutions, creative solutions to real problems. This isn't just an academic discussion. This shows up in the real world. And when I do mediation work, everything that I do is driving us to this awareness of needs. And it's when we get to that, on that needs level, when we can start to think and understand ourselves, the world, our situations in reference to needs, a world of opportunity opens up to us. The brainstorming begins. It invokes an incredibly creative state uh, that uh, is it seems miraculous at times. And and when I do a mediation, all I'm trying to do is have all parties understand their own and be able to articulate their own and understand and articulate the other party's needs. And in that state, when I can understand my needs and say them, understand your needs and say them, you can understand your needs and say them, and you can understand my needs and say them. When we can get to those four places, those four states, in my work, I've never had a situation where we could not resolve it. Now, can we always get to that state? Unfortunately, no. But when we can figure something out. And it does, for me, it does feel miraculous every time that happens. So I just wanted to point that out. So please, Clara, continue.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, you were reminding me of how, I mean, again, and I'm quite envious that you had the chance to work so closely with Marshall. And so I only can report things I heard from others, but I remember him mentioning how really what takes the longest part of the work is to get to that place, or to really, because there's also sometimes I say in my workshops. There's a way to get to needs intellectually, like I can say, oh, it makes sense, you have that need, and there's a way to have an embodied experience. So what does it mean? How does that quality live in you? Because when I touch that, I can say, oh, you must be needing connection, right? In a let's say in a conversation with you. But if I give myself the time to sense what is connection in me and how precious is that, then it's almost I step. There's no more necessarily almost a you and a me. There's an us where we both value something, right? And so
We share it, really.
you
Right?
share it. It's something we both value, right? It's not that I need it or you need it. It's that we recognize that that's a quality of life, right? That we want to experience, and that,
Yeah.
of course, easier said than done. And so sometimes, especially if there's layers and layers, both of pain and frankly also of conditioning, which I'm talking about more in a moment, but there's getting there to that
Yeah.
place
Yeah.
where we can see each other at that level. It may take, I don't know, from hours to a lifetime, possibly, I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
say,
Right.
right?
Depending on the situation. Absolutely.
Depending on the situation. And so,
Yeah.
but there's something that happens in that moment that you said it's almost miraculous, in that Marshall used to say that it's inevitable to
Yeah.
find right
Yeah.
solutions
Yeah.
at that point. And Robert was also having this expression, when you touch the quality of life, then kind of it flows into action. You
Yeah.
don't even have to make a decision a
Right.
decision about it. So
Yeah.
yes, I'm imagining the work in particularly in the experiences of conflict, whether we people or whether we navigate them ourselves or whether we are supporting other people navigating them. Truly, at essence, is how can we get to that place, which is a sort of the roomy field, right, beyond
Yeah.
ideas
Yeah.
of right and wrong.
Right. It's the root of humanity. It's where
Exactly.
we're the trunk is where we are all joined. And I don't say this without proof. The course now has been going on. I've been teaching it for 12 years, and we are in virtually every country in the world. We're in, well, certainly in over 120 countries right now, on every continent except Antarctica, and in over 20 languages. So what the reason I say that is, I'm just kind of want to circle back to this idea of worldview. Um, that if we don't have something that transcends worldview, we have a real challenge. And so that's the thing. Like what I'm talking about to me is, kind of the proof. It was the proof to me that, because I didn't know, I only grew up in one particular culture. And so when I started this, I had hoped that it was universally human. It occurred to me that it was. And now I know it is, because all the humans everywhere around this world, the sun never sets on needs awareness now. It is,
Mhm.
it is there, and it is doing its thing from China to Australia to Africa to Europe to the US to the southern, to South America, to literally virtually everywhere in the world. This is working. It's contagious because it does something, and
Mhm.
it has this incredible ability to transcend worldview and to transcend conflict and transcend violence, and
Mhm.
really bring us to this kind of new human I like to call Homo compass, where we are singularly concerned with everybody on the planet, and we can understand people, anybody doing anything on the planet, if they're alive, if they're fulfilling, right? If we can get that view, that lens of needs, we can We can see people who are doing absolutely horrible, horrible things and tragic, tragic things, and and not agree with them. However, when we can do this in this through this vision of needs awareness, we don't have to hate to stop them. We just want to protect life. And it gives us I know for me, it gives me a North Star.
Yeah. Yeah. As I hear you, the other important thing that comes to mind, it links also to what you were just saying of compassion, right? So there's a going back to the thought and idea of words as a portal to meaning making, right? And we're
Mm-hmm.
saying it's this idea of universal human needs as these particular words that are able to help us make sense of life in a particular way. Now, the interesting aspect to that is that most often, if not always, probably, or we are used to make life up, make sense of life in a different way with different words, right? And
Right.
if we think about why do people behave the way they do, and you have been the one teaching that to me really originally, is that we have a language that's really has a pervasive presence of judgment in the meaning, and by judgment meaning thoughts of right and wrong or good and bad. So the type of what we would call a moralistic judgment, right, where there's a valence there of and a language that tends to create categories and groups, and in some way can be a language that polarizes and that divides, right? If and again, it's still they're still concepts, right? It's still activity of our brain, are still words that try to help us make sense, but in doing so through those words, then the way we behave as a consequence is usually a way where we either try to at times use our power over other people, punish or threat because, bad people who do the wrong things, and so on. And so it's a Marshall, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, used to say that wherever there are ideas of right and wrong, violence follows very, very quickly, right?
Yeah.
And so I like to juxtapose these two possibilities. You call it the parallel universe, right?
Yeah.
So and it's very, for me, this is such a crucial idea because we're not saying, oh, one thing exists, one thing does not exist. Like, oh, needs are real and then right and wrong ideas are not real. We're really saying these are two approaches to look at reality, right?
Yeah.
And we can and most often we don't even have the awareness that we can look, at reality
Yeah.
through needs. We only know the right and wrong, but and from which side, from which perspective and side we look, then how does our behavior change? How do I behave if I move from the story, let's say, of we're all trying to meet our needs,
Yeah.
sometimes in tragic ways, versus where how do I behave if I move from, that person is bad or I am bad, or or I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And
So we're
very
looking at really we're looking at outcomes, and the thing is, let's just say this now. All those right, wrong thinking, does it meet needs? It actually does. It does. There are
person.
outcomes. Like we know we learn how to behave, we learn how to fit in, all these things. We create we create norms, all this. So yeah, there are needs met by, so it's not like one or the other. But I think when we talk about outcomes, that when we look at the right wrong thinking, not to say that it's useless or anything like that, but that it has an outcome. It has just what you were talking about, Clark.
Yeah,
It has what I'll call some baggage,
yeah,
that we might not want. And not that, and so, right. And so it's not like this is the right way, that's the wrong way. but it's that if we just look at outcomes, if we just look at how
Yeah.
can we approach a conflict, if we approach it
Yeah.
right, wrong perspective, or do we approach it from an awareness of needs perspective?
Yeah.
What are the outcomes?
Yeah, there's an expression that I remember and love from, I don't recall now where I found it, but it was the expression of so who am I if I inhabit this narrative versus the other? So who am I? How am I if I move from a needs lens approach versus a right wrong approach? And so, as you said, there's still attempts of our nervous system to navigate life there. And one, again, through these new special words that we're using, and the other one through a different set of words. But ultimately, they try to accomplish in some ways the same thing, but how they get us there can be very different. And usually I say the right and wrong type of thinking is very closely then connected with the language of blame, of criticism, or of threat, of consequences, and versus an approach that some people may call punitive, right, or coercive, while moving from a needs lens helps us have a more restorative approach, where when something happens that's harmful or in the most generic sense doesn't work for us, then we can ask why doesn't it work for us, and why is the other person behaving such way? And if we are able to find the needs at the root, then the approach can be a constructive one and a more sustainable one, frankly
Yeah.
as well. And the super cool thing about that, and then I know you want to speak to, I'll give it back to you in a moment. Yeah, but
I'll
it's
write it down.
okay. Yes, is the fact that, because, and I wanted to link this because you mentioned compassion-based intervention before, and 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 of course this compassion is not, it's not another not new idea, right? I feel like a variety of spiritual practices, if not therapeutic modalities, and so on, and various framework goes in a simple way would say, okay, we feel better when we are compassionate toward each other, right? So we agree that compassion is good, but the interesting aspect is, okay, how do I get there, right? How do you said I could try to sort of maybe meditative practices certainly have a big role, but there's something about our work and the work of NVC that, and I find this to be unique, frankly, compared to other pathways, which maybe invite me to be in a non-judgmental stance, like mindfulness, for example, has a lot of that. I meet your experience in a non-judgmental way, allow that to be. And that sounds great. That's an awesome idea, except I am going to judge my experience and I'm going to be judgmental, because, as you often say, as long as we are alive, we're going to be judgmental because our brains are going to judge, right? It's what they do for a living, really.
Yeah, right.
And so, and they're going to try to create categories and try to navigate reality. And what I love about our work is that through needs awareness, I don't have to suppress the judgment or judge the judgment and so on. So I can see that as a cry for help, almost from some needs that are not being met. So I don't know, if I were to have a judgment thought that someone is being selfish, I can ask myself, so what am I needing in that moment that is not there? And maybe I'll find cooperation, support, attention. If I think someone is being irresponsible, maybe I'm needing trust, cooperation, and shared reality, and
Right.
so on and so forth. And in that way, I say that because I feel that we know where we want to get. Yes, compassion is great, but not often we have efficient and effective ways that can take us there.
Yeah.
And so I think
Yeah.
that's also the beauty of
Well,
need.
yeah, and we can go back to this statement. The very first thing I ever said to you is everything we do to meet a need. And that includes judging, right? And so if we can even, we don't have to stop, we don't have to stomp out judging. What we do is well, in our work, we call it translating judgment, right? We take this signal, or we take judgment as a signal that something's not working. And then instead of taking it at its on its face, what we do is we translate it into the very underlying wonderful thing that we would like to be experiencing. And so what that tees up, by the way, is a word um, that it's something that humans are actually, although sometimes it doesn't feel that way or seem that way to us, but we are really good at collaborating. It's how we got here. If you look, the way the world is today is we got here by collaborating, by functioning in large numbers together. And so I just want to, like put a shout out to needs awareness, because it amps up our ability to collaborate. And, there's one of the probably first questions I ever asked also in our first encounter, and I love to ask this question. And if you're listening to this, how many of you would like to talk about how stupid you are? Does that turn you on? You like ready to talk? You're ready to chat? Like going, oh yeah, this is good. Let's talk about that. Or what if I stop and I go, wow, you know what? I'm thinking somebody is stupid. What do I want? What is that? My three favorite words. I ask myself this all the time when I'm judging, and I'm like, what is that? What is that? And so what that is a need. And so maybe if I'm thinking stupid, maybe I want some more understanding, or I'd like to have more flow, or I'd like to have more partnership or more collaboration. And so let me, if you're listening, still listening after after the last thing I said, how would you like to talk about how we could have more understanding and more flow and more collaboration between us? And
Mm.
that's it, right? That's the other side of the same coin. That's the other side of the stupid coin. So the difference that needs awareness gives us is that it really helps us. It just creates so much more flow and so much more productivity on, in teams and in marriages and in relationships, when we can kind of take that diamond in the rough known as a judgment and turn it into a beautiful shining diamond, which is a need. And
Yeah.
I don't know of any needs that aren't really wonderful to think about.
Yeah. And
So
I'm imagining if probably if we found one that isn't, then we would probably say maybe that's not exactly a need, right? I
yeah,
think it's almost that that's the ideas, even with the universality of that. Sometimes I tell people rather it's a if it doesn't feel universal, it's probably not what we would call a need. And so if you find yourself thinking that, think again about that word. Maybe that's more of again it is some level of specificity.
yeah.
There's this image I have in mind, and I know we need to wind down, otherwise I will keep people here forever. But so you tell me when we need to sort of wind down our chats, because we could go on forever. I have this image in mind, and I almost want to put a call out to who's listening. If you're the creative type and you want to create a graphics of that, please send it send it our way, because I'm thinking to even or otherwise also try with some AI generator. But I have this image of how in some ways there's needs as is that this a convergence of all the various facets of our mental experience. And by mental, I mean an extended mental. I think even
Yeah.
being aware of our emotions and feelings is an activity of the mind in some way. And so from our perceptions, what we see, from our thoughts, but even our memories, body sensations, and judgments, even all of that information that in a way we have available to
Mhm.
guide us converges. It's like almost like a pointer needs act as an integrator, if you're willing, an
Yeah.
integrator of all of that information that then allows to translate all of that into what I call compassionate action. And by compassionate meaning action that is aligned with the energy of life, right? And it's interesting because you said collaboration, and absolutely we're social animals. Like we wouldn't be here without having developed these skills to understand each other, to care for each other,
Yeah.
to work together. But I find that the beauty of also of compassionate action that sometimes might not be the immediately maybe on top of people's mind is that compassionate action can be also a compassionate boundary, a compassionate non-collaboration, but the
Right.
coming from a place of maybe this is not working for us, but it can work in other ways. I think that those 10,000 strategies that you talked before, and that's to me so powerful that um, it's a wisdom that can both help me move towards, sometimes move towards another direction, but it changes so much the way we do that. And yeah, I think that's uh, I find that very empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to tag on to that too, because we've really touched on so much of the human experience, and one of the, we talk about becoming aware of needs, what it needs awareness. How do we do that? Like with me, with my famous 3 words or favorite 3 words, which is what is that? We become aware that we have unmet needs by becoming aware of our judgments, which is why it's important to become aware of them because they are a a way to have access to finding out what is it, what do we really want? So that we don't go around saying stupid. Instead, we go around saying collaboration or flow or understanding. And so that's going to make your life a lot more wonderful. And so there's one little aspect, also big aspect, really, and one that's challenging for a lot of us, which is feelings. And I think this to really make this conversation complete, it makes sense for us to just talk about that. And luckily it's not that complex. When our needs are met, we feel good. And when our needs are not met, we do not feel good. And when our needs are really met, we feel really good. And when our needs are really, really not met, we feel really, really crummy. And so, just a little, thought experiment here for you if you're listening, to play with you could play the what is that game. Notice that when you're feeling something, whether you're feeling really good or feeling really bad, and ask yourself, what is that? And then look at the need sheet that we are going to somehow get to you. I know you can get it on my website, tombond.com, under resources. And I believe we also have a copy of it on the nycnbc.org website. So get yourself a needs sheet, our needs sheet. We're very specific, um, so that we know that you're not going to confuse strategies with needs. And so the next time you can find yourself thinking stupid or thinking selfish or thinking crazy or thinking you'll feel it in your body too, right? Like ask yourself, what is that? And then go look at that sheet and see what happens. I
Mm.
love this because it is universally human. So each one of you listening, you brought a specimen along. You have a human life, you have a human body. So this will work if you're a human and you're alive. So to just be aware that if you are having a feeling, it's because there's a need met or not met. And if you want to know more about yourself, more about what you love, and more about things that you maybe don't love, ask yourself, what is that? And look at that sheet. So again, a feeling, a judgment, and 3 words. What is that? And look at your need sheet. And that is going to give you an introduction to this whole subject that Clara and I have been talking about for an hour or so here. Um, and we've probably talked about for days if you added it all up over the years. But it's real, it works. I just find it to be one of the greatest opportunities that we as a species have to really change what it's like to be a human being and to make our lives better. And so, yeah, like that. So, Clara, anything that any finishing, any closing comments here?
Yeah, and I'm so glad we did this. I'm really curious how this lands with people. If there's a way for them to leave a comment in your on your podcast, and I think that you and I are both excited to keep shaping our curriculum in such a way that makes it clearer and clearer what we're talking about. I mean, frankly, your compassion course curriculum does it already in a in a beautiful way. I'm on my side for the maybe listeners not know that as much. I've been over this past year focusing more on what we call the NYC curriculum, that is just another format and another ways to really
Yeah,
integrate the same consciousness. And
yeah,
we are excited to help people really understand the power of this lens, and how, and all the both all the practical skills to integrate that, and all the consequences that follow from is a three, I don't know how many words, everything you do anyway, whatever number of words that expression is,
what is
because
that?
yeah, or the everything we do to meet a need.
Yeah,
You capture so many in the compassion course, which, by the way, people can find as a book as well. I think it's maybe
yeah,
important for them to know.
thanks. Yeah,
It makes you really, you can talk about, besides these core foundations, as we said, of how judgments relate to needs, how feelings relate to needs, what does it mean to listen for needs, and our definition of empathy. But get out to talk up to ideas such as protective use of force, forgiveness, beliefs, anger, spirituality even. So there's something that when you adopt that lens, what can follow is really, as yeah, it's incredible. So I'm excited to keep unravel that together, and reach people with something that has been certainly life changing for us. I dare say, I can say it for myself, but I think it's for you as well.
mhm.
And I just want to say to be continued. We'll see what we can chat about next.
Next time. Sounds good to me. So yeah, so if you want to, Clara has been doing things in 3 dimensions, in person, live, mainly in the New York area, but I know she's been known to travel when requested. So she's around, she's available. It's Clara Moisello. So she is you can find out about Clara by going to NYCNVC, which stands for the New York Center for Nonviolent Communication.org. And so
Mhm.
you can find out more about Clara. You can find contact information, get hold of her there as well. And yeah, if you have anything you'd like to say, I mean, you can certainly send an email to Clara, CLARA, at nycnbc.org. And we'd love to hear from you. I know Clara would love to hear from you. And you can always reach me at Thom Bond at nycnbc.org as well. And yeah, Clara, thank you for the last hour, but thank you for the last 10 years. It has been quite a trip, and I'm really looking forward to the next 10.
Mm. Thank you, and very much likewise. Thank you, Thom.
Cool, thanks. All right. Till we meet again. Thank you. That is a wrap. Take care.